A woman at a restaurant demanded I trade meals with her because yours looks better than mine. When I refused, she reached over, swiped my plate, and smirked. Well, I'm taking it. The waiter froze in shock as I grabbed the check, called the manager over, and said, Then let's see who's paying for it. I never thought a simple dinner would turn into such a fiasco, but here we are. A few weeks ago, I decided to treat myself to a meal at the Blue Orchid, a well-known spot in downtown Chicago. It's one of those places that strikes a balance between cozy and upscale, perfect for unwinding after a long week. I arrived around 7 p.m., and though the place was buzzing, I managed to snag a small table near the window. The ambience was just right, soft jazz playing in the background, the clinking of glasses, and the murmur of conversations. I placed my order, a medium-rare steak with garlic mashed potatoes and a side of sautéed asparagus. As I waited, I sipped on a glass of red wine, letting the day's stress melt away. Not long after, a group entered the restaurant. Among them was a woman who, from the moment she stepped in, exuded an air of entitlement. She was dressed impeccably, but there was a sharpness to her demeanor that was hard to miss. The hostess seated them at a table diagonally across from mine. Their table was loud, filled with animated discussions and frequent bursts of laughter. I tried to focus on my own space, but their volume made it challenging. Still, I was determined to enjoy my evening. When my meal arrived, it was a sight to behold, the steak cooked to perfection, the potatoes creamy, and the asparagus vibrant green. I picked up my knife and fork, ready to dive in, when I noticed the woman from the other table approaching. She stopped beside me, her eyes fixed on my plate. Your meal looks better than mine, she remarked, her tone suggesting more than just casual observation. Caught off guard, I managed a polite smile. Thank you. I'm sure yours is delicious as well. She didn't budge. What did you order? She pressed. The house special steak with sides, I replied, hoping that would end the conversation. She frowned. I should have ordered that. Mine's not what I expected. Awkwardly, I offered. Perhaps you can speak to your server about adjusting your order? Her eyes narrowed slightly. Or, she began, a smirk forming on her lips. You could trade meals with me. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. Excuse me? Let's swap. Yours looks better, and I'm not satisfied with mine. I was taken aback. I'm sorry, but I'd prefer to enjoy the meal I ordered. Without warning, she reached over, her hand swift and deliberate, and grabbed my plate. Well, I'm taking it, she declared, her voice loud enough to draw attention from nearby tables. For a moment, I sat in stunned silence, processing the audacity of her action. The surrounding patrons had paused their conversations, eyes darting between us, waiting to see how the scene would unfold. The waiter, a young man named Daniel who had been attentive throughout the evening, stood frozen a few steps away, his eyes wide with disbelief. The restaurant's atmosphere had shifted from relaxed to tense in mere seconds. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Rising from my chair, I addressed Daniel. Could you please bring me the check? He hesitated, glancing between the woman and me. Of course, sir. Right away. As he hurried off, I turned to the woman, who was now seated at her table, smugly cutting into the steak that had been mine. Since you've taken my meal, I said evenly, it's only fair that you cover its cost. She looked up, feigning innocence. Oh, I assumed you'd already paid. I shook my head. No, I hadn't. Her companions shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly embarrassed by the unfolding drama. One of them, a man in his mid-30s, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all just settle our own bills and move on. Ignoring him, she leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. I'm not paying for 2 meals. I nodded, already anticipating her response. In that case, let's involve the manager. Daniel returned with the check, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. Behind him was a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, a name tag reading, Robert, indicating he was the manager. Is there a problem here? Robert asked, his voice calm but authoritative. I gestured toward the woman. This patron took my meal without consent, and is now refusing to pay for it. Robert's brow furrowed as he turned to her. Ma'am, is this true? She scoffed. I was just trying to rectify a poor dining experience. His meal looked better, so I took it. It's not a big deal. Robert's jaw tightened. Actually, it is. Taking another guest's meal without permission is unacceptable behavior in our establishment. She rolled her eyes. Fine. Add it to our bill. Robert nodded to Daniel, who made a note on their table's tab. Thank you, Robert said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I trust there will be no further issues. As Robert and Daniel walked away, the woman shot me a glare. Happy now? I met her gaze steadily. I came here for a peaceful meal. Your actions disrupted that. she huffed, turning back to her plate. Her companions avoided eye contact, clearly mortified by the scene she'd caused. I returned to my seat, Daniel approaching shortly after with a fresh plate of food. "On the house?" he said with a small smile. "Thank you," I replied, appreciating the gesture. The rest of my meal passed without incident. As I finished, Robert approached my table. "I apologize for the earlier disturbance," he said sincerely. "I appreciate how you handled it," I responded. He nodded. "We strive to ensure all our guests have a pleasant experience. Please consider this meal complimentary." I thanked him, left a generous tip for Daniel, and made my way out, the evening's events leaving me with much to ponder about entitlement and common decency. I thought that would be the end of it. But 2 days later, I got a phone call at work from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but I did. It was Robert, the manager from the Blue Orchid. "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you," he said, sounding tired. "I just wanted to give you a heads up. That woman? She's caused some more trouble. And now she's dragging your name into it." I leaned back in my chair. "What do you mean?" "She came in again last night. Different group. She ordered the same steak. Then she told the waiter you were a regular who always gave her your meal because you're some kind of local food critic. When he didn't buy it, she threw a fit and said you promised her your plate last time." I laughed, dry and annoyed. "Is this some kind of joke? I wish." It escalated to the point where we had to ask her to leave. She screamed about getting you fired, said she had your name, said you were going to regret humiliating her. I rubbed my face. "That's insane." "Exactly. And I only called to warn you because she's clearly not letting it go." I thanked him and hung up, but the second I did, I started to feel uneasy. I had no idea who this woman was, where she came from, what her name was. But somehow she had mine. The next morning, things got worse. There were posts on a local Chicago food forum, someone calling me out by first and last name, claiming I stole their reservation at the Blue Orchid, bullied a woman over food, and physically intimidated staff. It was all fake. All of it. But the comments underneath were piling up. People were furious. Some were defending me, but others, not so much. I don't know how she found my name. Maybe she glanced at my card when I paid. Maybe she overheard the waiter say it. But she had it. And now she was using it. A few friends messaged me asking if I'd seen the thread. I said yes. Most laughed it off. One told me to get a lawyer, just in case. By the end of the week, someone emailed my office's general inbox pretending to be a customer. They complained that I was rude and violent in public, and asked why my company supported bullies. I knew right away it was her. The tone, the weird choice of words, it all matched the online post. My boss called me in. He was cool about it, but concerned. "This is probably nothing," he said. "But we have to take these things seriously. Just be careful out there." I went home that night more paranoid than I'd ever felt. I closed my blinds. I deleted my social media. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching me somehow. That this woman, who I still didn't even know by name, had decided I was her personal enemy. But it wasn't just paranoia. The next time I went to the Blue Orchid, to talk to Robert in person, not even to eat, I noticed a car idling across the street. Same car as last time I'd seen her. Same color, same dent on the bumper. I stared at it. The lights flicked on. It drove off. Robert met me outside. "You okay?" he asked. I told him everything, the online post, the office email, the car. He sighed. "She's not just difficult. She's unhinged." "Do you have her name?" I asked. He nodded. "She used a loyalty card on her last visit. Her name is Rachel. That's all I've got." Finally. A name. I spent the next few days searching. Facebook. LinkedIn. Twitter. Local community forums. It took time, but eventually I found her. She was a self-proclaimed marketing strategist, ran a blog about restaurant experiences, and had several very heated reviews about how she was mistreated in high-end spots. It was all a pattern. Bad experience, claim someone else caused it, stir up drama online. One post caught my eye. Dated 6 months ago, about a different restaurant across town. Same story. A man at the table next to me refused to share food. He humiliated me. I had to take matters into my own hands. Another one. I refuse to be disrespected by people who think they're better than me just because they order the right thing. I scrolled through comment after comment. Some called her brave. Some called her delusional. But one stood out. It was from another user. "Wait. Are you the same Rachel who flipped out at the Blue Orchid and tried to steal some guy's steak? She replied. He deserved it. No one should get to treat me like I'm less than them. That was when I knew this wouldn't end quietly. She wasn't just dramatic. She was fixated. And for some reason, I had become the symbol of everything she felt wronged by. So I started documenting everything. Screenshots. Emails. Even the posts she made. I saved it all. Just in case. Then, one day, my building's concierge flagged me down. Hey, he said. You have a visitor who's been here twice this week asking for you. Woman, mid-30s, designer coat. Said she was your friend from work. I don't have any friends from work who would randomly show up. I asked if she left a name. He said she just kept smiling and saying, he'll know me when he sees me. I didn't leave my apartment that night. Something had shifted. What started as a petty act over a meal was spiraling into something darker, something with real consequences. And I wasn't going to let it get any worse. At least, not without being ready. It started getting harder to sleep. Every time I turned off the lights, I felt like someone was watching. I couldn't explain it. There was no proof she was nearby again, no reason to think she'd come back to my building, but the pit in my stomach wouldn't go away. I started noticing weird things. One morning, I came out to find my car windshield smeared with something sticky, looked like old syrup or soda. It was a mess, and no one else's car was touched. I checked the garage cameras, but of course, the angle missed my parking spot completely. My building's maintenance guy just shrugged. Kids maybe, he said. But I knew better. A week later, I got a package at my door. No return address. Inside was a restaurant menu. Not from the Blue Orchid, this one was from a place called Terrace View, on the other side of the city. Nothing else was in the envelope, not even a note. Just a menu, creased and folded. It felt like a message. I looked it up. Sure enough, there was a 1-star Yelp review from someone named Rachel M., posted just a few days before. Same pattern. Someone refused to switch plates, she accused the staff of ignoring her, left a rant. The review ended with a line that stopped me cold. People think they can dismiss me and move on. They'll learn I don't go away. That's when I started piecing it together. This wasn't just about me. She'd been doing this for a while. I don't know how many people she targeted, but I knew she was escalating. I contacted one of the users who had replied to her old blog, the one who asked if she was the same person from the Blue Orchid. He responded quickly. His name was Kevin. He lived a few miles north of me. He told me she showed up at his job, posing as a client, after he commented on her blog post calling her out. She tried to follow me home, he said. I reported it, but nothing happened. She's smart. Always skates just under the line. Kevin and I stayed in touch. We started comparing notes, digging into her online presence, finding other people she harassed. One guy claimed she messaged his girlfriend pretending to be his ex. Another said she tried to get him banned from his gym by accusing him of staring at her. None of it ever stuck, but it was always chaos, always drama. I felt like I was living in a slow-moving car crash. Then something happened that really messed with my head. I went to the Blue Orchid again, don't ask me why. Maybe part of me wanted to prove she didn't scare me. Maybe I just needed a good steak. I sat at the bar this time, less conspicuous. Ordered a drink. The bartender recognized me, nodded politely, didn't make small talk. Halfway through my meal, he leaned over and said quietly, "She was here yesterday." I froze. "Rachel?" He nodded. "Didn't order. Just sat at the bar. Asked which night you usually come in. We didn't tell her anything, but she watched people. Left after an hour." I pushed my plate away. Lost my appetite. At that point, I started making calls. Police, lawyer, even a private investigator, someone Kevin recommended. The PI wasn't cheap, but he was sharp. I gave him everything I had. He took it all seriously. Within a week, he came back with something I wasn't ready for. "She's done this in 3 different cities," he told me. "Chicago's just her latest." He handed me a folder with printed screenshots, forum posts, even scanned police incident reports. None of them had her full name, but the patterns were identical. Entitlement. Escalation. Revenge. In one case, she got a man fired by pretending to be his angry wife, calling his boss every day for a week. In another, she keyed a woman's car because she refused to let her skip ahead in line. "She doesn't want justice," the investigator said. "She wants control. This whole food thing? That's just her entry point." I sat with that for a while. Let it sink in. I wasn't just dealing with a petty thief. I was dealing with someone who turned minor slights into full-blown vendettas. Someone who chased people across jobs, neighborhoods, cities, until they broke, or disappeared, or gave up. But I wasn't planning on disappearing. The investigator helped me file for a restraining order. It wasn't easy, no physical threat, no direct violence. But with enough documentation, enough statements, we had a chance. Kevin wrote a statement. So did the bartender. Even Robert, the manager. The court date was set. A week before the hearing, I came home and found my door slightly open. Just enough to notice. I live alone. I always lock my door. Inside, nothing was missing. Nothing was broken. But one thing was different. My refrigerator door was wide open. Inside, my food had been rearranged. Labels facing forward. Nothing gone. Just moved. My stomach dropped. No forced entry. No signs of a break-in. But she'd been there. I knew it. The investigator had warned me, people like her get sloppy when they're about to lose control. That wasn't a message. That was a warning. That night, I installed cameras. I told my landlord. I made a police report. They didn't take it seriously. But I did. Because this wasn't over. And she was getting closer. The court date came faster than I expected. I'd barely slept in the days leading up to it. My nerves were shot, and I kept thinking she wouldn't show up. That she'd back out, disappear, move on to someone else like she had in other cities. But no. Rachel showed up. She walked into the courthouse like it was a fashion runway. Calm, composed, lips painted red like nothing had ever happened. She even smiled at me when she walked by. I couldn't believe it. Kevin sat beside me in the waiting area, silent. He didn't need to say anything. His presence was enough. The private investigator stood behind us, arms crossed, watching Rachel like a hawk. When the judge called our case, everything felt surreal. I presented the documents, the screenshots, the messages. Kevin gave his statement. The bartender's affidavit was read aloud. Robert's email was submitted. The investigator laid out a pattern of behavior. It was tight. Solid. Then Rachel got to speak. She stood calm as ever and started crying. Real tears. Or at least they looked real. She told the judge I was obsessed with her. That I'd been harassing her online. That I had created a fake network of people to target her because I was angry she didn't give me attention. She said I was retaliating for a harmless misunderstanding at a restaurant. She said I was dangerous. For a moment, I thought she might win. She played the part perfectly. The quiet, terrified woman. The victim. The courtroom was silent when she sat down, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Then the judge spoke. She didn't buy it. The judge granted the restraining order. It was temporary for now, but with conditions. Rachel was not to contact me, speak about me, come near my home or workplace, or reach out to anyone connected to me. The judge called her behavior disturbing and manipulative. Rachel didn't move. She stared straight ahead like the ruling hadn't registered. Then she snapped. You think you're better than me? She shouted, pointing at me. You humiliated me. You think this ends with some paper order? You'll see. The bailiff stepped in fast. Rachel tried to jerk her arm away but got walked out. I sat there, frozen. Not because I was scared. Because I felt nothing. Numb. Like all the energy, all the stress, had finally run dry. Outside the courtroom, Kevin clapped me on the shoulder. You did it, man. But I didn't feel like I'd won. Over the next week, the aftermath started creeping in. Rachel's blog disappeared. Her review accounts went silent. But someone, maybe her, maybe someone else, sent emails to people I knew. Old friends. A cousin. My supervisor. All vague, weird messages hinting at danger, and keeping distance from me. One message even quoted something from the hearing word for word. It was exhausting. Like trying to patch holes in a sinking ship. But eventually it slowed down. Then stopped. Kevin and I stayed in touch. Turned out, so did two of the other guys who Rachel had messed with. We formed this weird little support group, swapping updates, checking in, venting. It helped more than I thought it would. One night, a month after the court date, I got a call from Robert. You're not going to believe this, he said. Rachel showed up again. My stomach twisted. What happened? She tried to book a table under a fake name. We caught it. She made a scene outside, then left. Said she was writing a new review. Called you a fraud. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Of course she did. Robert sighed. You okay? I think so. I didn't see Rachel again after that. Maybe she finally realized the game was over. Maybe she just moved on to her next target. I don't know. But something had changed in me. It wasn't just about steak or a crazy woman anymore. It was about boundaries. About realizing how fast a normal life can get turned inside out by one unhinged person. I used to think confrontation was something to avoid at all costs. Now I know there are times you have to stand up, not just for yourself, but for the people watching. The ones who think they're alone. I still go to the Blue Orchid now and then. Sit at the same table. Order the same steak. The staff gives me a nod. No one talks about Rachel anymore. But every time I cut into that first bite, I remember. And I don't feel angry. Not anymore. Just wary. Wiser. And finally at peace.